Violence on both sides has escalated in Jerusalem and on the West Bank. In a spate of incidents, which includes a Palestinian woman was shot dead while trying to knife Israeli border police, and 2 Israelis were wounded in attempted stabbings. Palestinians too have been killed or wounded by Israeli soldiers. Knife attacks, shootings and protests have increased since early October, in really a decades-old conflict, as diplomats, including America's John Kerry, scramble to try and avert what many fear could be a new Palestinian intifada or uprising. Can Australia do much to stop this worsening? Well, I'm joined now by Shadow Parliamentary Secretary, Labor's Michael Danby, who's in our Melbourne studio. Michael Danby, thanks for joining us.
Evening, Helen.
Now, how do you see this current uprising of violence in Jerusalem and the West Bank? Is it all one-sided in your view? Is it all the Palestinians doing wrong?
Well, Helen, I see it in a slightly different context from just the geographical area that it's happening. And I see it as part of a worldwide phenomena of young, deluded people being encouraged by jihadist preachers to they're encouraged in their bedrooms with the internet that there's no other way but to go off and do this. And just as we're concerned about it with the 3 incidents that have happened here in Australia in Danby Hills, Parramatta, at the Lint Cafe, the Israelis have got the same problem times 20, where more than 110 people have been stabbed, and
Sorry,
some
so
of
are
them
you
have been
actually
shot dead by the police.
equating what has happened on the streets of Sydney in limited numbers, fortunately, and the Lint Cafe siege and at Parramatta with what is going on between the Palestinians and the Israelis?
Absolutely, because it's part of this worldwide problem that we have, and unless you look at the footage of the incitement of some of these preachers, unless you look at the same phenomena of ordinary civilians being run down by cars. Helen, let's remember that's what that 14-year-old boy in London who's been jailed, who was working with a man here who's been jailed, were planning to do on Anzac Day in Melbourne. Run down some police in a car, and then the fellow was meant to jump out and then chop off their head. Now this is a problem.
Sorry,
that's
Michael,
not just...
I mean, you are conflating a couple of very different issues, aren't you? I mean, you are essentially blaming the Palestinians, saying they are the only ones doing wrong. And I mean, yes, they are doing wrong. They are attacking people and stabbing people. But according to the figures, the numbers of Palestinians killed in attempted attacks and clashes is now 53 or something like that. And they're being killed by Israeli soldiers mostly.
Well, Helen, I'm sure you're not suggesting because there have been insufficient numbers of Israelis killed, only stabbed, that it was wrong for the security forces to defend themselves. Let's remember what happened in Parramatta and in Danby Hills and in the Lint Cafe. The assailants of ordinary civilians were shot dead by our security forces. And I'm sorry, if someone got on a school bus with a machete here to kill school children, I would support the police. I wouldn't support the perpetrators.
Yeah,
I'm not suggesting you do, but what I'm saying is that to compare the number of dead is only a reflection of the number of stabbing incidents. There are many more Israelis who've been stabbed and have been shot dead.
But you didn't put the other side as well. Now, this particular violence does appear to revolve around potential changes to the mosque that is sacred to both Jews and Palestinians, the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agreed to new measures to try and allay Palestinian fears that Israel plans to change the rules governing that site. Now, he is going to install more video cameras to ease this tension. Do you think that will ease the unrest?
Well, he had the video cameras 2 years ago and they were removed at the insistence of the Muslim authorities. And there has always been I mean, it's a very Jewish thing to respect other people's religions. Jews are not allowed to even pray on the Temple Mount. So it's that's something that Netanyahu has re-emphasised. The actual incitement came from President Abbas, who said, and used the expression, and it's been broadcast all over the internet, Helen, that Jews shouldn't bring their dirty feet up onto the Temple Mount, and that there was some attempt to change the religious circumstances there. I think the Israelis should stick to their their current program of not having other religions pray up there. They should allow the Jordanian Waqf religious authority to keep maintaining the area. And I agree with Secretary of State Kerry, who warned Mr Abbas not to continue the incitement and talking about other peoples and other religions with this dirty feet analogy. The American Congress has actually cut back $80 million of the, just today, of the Palestinian Authority's subsidy because of the incitement by the PA. But Helen, please, I'm sorry to disagree with you, but there really is a connection between what's happening there and what's happening all around the world. Of course it's overlaid by a national difference between the two people, and all people of goodwill like us in Australia support a two-state solution and the two parties having political talks.
Okay,
but there really is this phenomenon of young people being fanaticised.
We only have limited time. Do you think UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who visited the area last week, US Secretary of State John Kerry, they're trying to have diplomatic solutions. Can any achieve any prospect of peace?
Well, 3 times the Palestinians have been offered a Palestinian state, one under Mr Barak, one under Mr Olmert, and one under recent discussions with Mr Kerry, and each time they've said no. The problem is some of us in the world have to face the fact that there are elements in the Arab and Muslim world who don't tolerate other people's rights or national rights. You can see that in the way the poor Christian people of Iraq and Syria and the minorities are being treated. The fact that the Israelis stand up for themselves shouldn't be something that's criticised, and there's no excuse for people stabbing ordinary people in the street. It's actually happening all over Israel, not just in Jerusalem.
Can
Helen,
Australia do any more to put pressure on both sides to try and stop this escalation?
Yes, I think it should. I think we should ask Mr Abbas to please stop the incitement. We haven't heard a word from the Turnbull government about that. I think that would be helpful as part of Secretary Kerry's international efforts to ask Mr Abbas to cool the situation down, and again encourage Mr Netanyahu to keep the existing religious separation up there on the Temple Mount, the Haram al-Sharif.
All right, I do need to change the subject. Russia's intervention into Syria. It's gone off the front pages of the newspapers in recent days, but do you see it is having any positive impact?
I actually see it as making the situation worse, Helen. The campaign by the United States and Australia against Daesh in the eastern part of Syria, I've got it here on this little map, is quite understandable. I'm holding it up high.
Go ahead.
In the grey area is where Daesh is, mainly in the deserts of Syria.
Yes,
but in the pink and the green areas where the non-Daesh rebels are, the pro-Western rebels, they are being hammered by a mixture of Iran, Hezbollah, Russia and Syria, and that's what's causing people to flee out of Syria in their tens of thousands. I think we need a political agreement there, and Australia should stick to its guns that we had in the past, where both parties supported Mr Assad being got out of office there, and some kind of coalition government with the existing Syrian regime and the non-Daesh rebels.
All right, well, some weeks ago, Foreign Minister Julie Bishop said we might have to work with Russia to combat Islamic State or Daesh. Now, are you saying she's wrong?
I think she is. I think we should say we don't have a dog in that fight in the western parts of Syria, where the Syrians and the Iranians are pulverising the vast majority of Sunni Muslim people who are opposed to the rule of Assad. The longer Assad stays there, the more hundreds of thousands of people are going to flee into Lebanon, Turkey and Jordan, and then on to Europe. Helen, this is exactly the wrong way to go, and Australia shouldn't be encouraging it. The opposition supported strongly the government acting against Daesh, against IS in the deserts of Syria, where in Raqqa they are sending orders to these young people here in Australia. But I think we should just work to continue to get Assad out of there. It's making the situation worse for Australia to give its imprimatur to what the Russians and Assad are doing.
All right, Michael Danby, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you, Helen.